Good morning each and everyone. Thank you for being with us today. We will be discussing blended learning in the Philippines education. On this topic, we will be having our four speakers. Here we have our first speaker, Mr. Patrick Cabolario, who will be discussing blended learning situation in the Philippine education. In this topic, he will be discussing what is blended learning and its connection to the pandemic as well as its benefit to the students. Now let us hear from our first speaker.
Thanks for that introduction. My name is Patrick Herbolario and I will be discussing the blended learning situation in the Philippines. In the last few years, the blended learning situation in the Philippines was a bit rough, I would say, because we still don't have the tools to efficiently and effectively learn during those times. Now, the current situation of blended learning in the Philippines has improved a lot because the country already started implementing face-to-face classes on subjects that really need laboratory to effectively learn. Blended learning nowadays in the Philippines has been quite effective, I would say, because schools are letting you choose whether to go on purely online or modular, which is a fancy term for semi-face-to-face classes. And the technology has improved quite a lot to the point that it really is very easy to set up an online class. For me, I really have been used to blended learning, especially online classes, to be honest with you. But before, I really don't like online classes because I wouldn't really learn anything. But when the pandemic continued, I've been used to it since. With that said, if I would be able to choose to go online or face-to-face, I would rather choose online because I've been really used to it, and it would be a hard transition for me, to be honest with you. But there is an exception though, for subjects that really need laboratory to effectively teach them. I would go to the laboratory to learn. That's all I would say about the blended learning situation in the Philippines and my take about it, but thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patrick Cabolario. To summarize, blended learning is a combination of traditional teaching method with online-based instructions. This blended learning is helpful in the control of spreading of the COVID-19 virus. Also, with blended learning, it enhances the students' learning outcome. Our second speaker will be Mr. Vernon Sapdoy, who will be talking about the challenges of students in blended learning. In this topic, he will be talking about the experience of students during the pandemic and blended learning. We will now be hearing from our speaker.
The subtopic given to me is what are the challenges of blended learning. Our group put some of the challenges that now students are experiencing in this blended learning. Number one is poor internet connection. This is the most common problem that all of us are experiencing when it comes to internet connection. The students from rural areas are the most affected when it comes to this problem. Students may be done the activity on time, but there is a problem in submitting the activities using internet. Another example is late in Zoom lecture because of poor internet connection. And while in the middle of discussion, your phone is lost in connection to the internet, resulting that you just understand some part of the discussion. Number two is distraction and lack of focus. Students cannot focus to his or her studies because of the noise from the surrounding environment. For example, taking care of your niece while in the middle of online class. Another one is the noise of the construction site in your compound. Number three is lack of sleep from many requirements to finish. We students are also experiencing this one aside from our teachers. For example, we architecture students during the given plates every night. Measuring those lines, every lines in the drawing paper to get the accurate measurement and to get the expected outcome. And also doing the another activity given by the other subjects.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vernon Sapdoy. That was very interesting. To summarize what our speaker discussed, one of the challenges that students encountered is having poor internet connection. This is too much distraction from the surrounding environment and thereby lack of focus or concentration in studying. Moreover, students lack sleep because too much requirements provided by teachers. Our next speaker is Ms. Wela Baldo with the topic of the challenges of teachers in a blended learning classroom. Let us also hear the challenges encountered by the teachers during the blended learning brought about by the pandemic and how these teachers deal with the problems encountered. Okay, Ms. Baldo, the table is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Zurhan. Based on my research, one of the challenges for teachers in blended learning is the adoption of new technology and pedagogies, since some teachers might be unfamiliar with the new application or technology used in blended learning. Second is the additional faculty time and effort, since blended learning is either or both online or virtual, and traditional or face-to-face, teachers also have to travel and adjust their schedules according to the subjects or courses they handle in either or both online and face-to-face to accommodate their students. Additional workload is also one of their challenges because, as mentioned, it is either both online and face-to-face. So they have to provide modules or learning materials for both online and face-to-face, which can differ according to their topics or discussion. Some modules or learning materials are also better presented face-to-face rather than virtually. And of course, they also have to pay additional bills for electricity and the Wi-Fi or internet connection they'd be using for the online classes. Once again, I am Wela Baldo, and those are the challenges for teachers in blended learning.
And lastly, we have Ms. Janalyn Volante who will tell us about the advantages of blended learning in the Philippines. She will now tell us if these advantages had helped students in coping with the current situation in the Philippines. Now let us hear from our speaker.
Hello, my name is Janelyn A. Volante, and for our agenda number 4, our topic is about advantages of blended learning in the Philippines. Well, for me as a student myself, the first advantage of blended learning is boost efficiency. Blended learning saves me more time and effort than the traditional arrangement. If there is an internet signal in the area, students and teachers can access the modules at any time and from any location. Second advantage is the reduce of hassles of commuting to school, which is very time-consuming, especially to students whose house is far away from school. Also, commuting will also lead to waking up early to prepare, but in blended learning, it is more efficient. I could just wake up from my bed, open my laptop or cell phone to join the class. Number 3 is less spending. Yes, it is less spending of money for parents and students, especially to us college students that needs a large sum of money for boarding house, dorm or an apartment, and an allowance for day-to-day expenses, especially food and transportation, which will be divided because of the blended learning, but the tuition expenses will remain. Number 4, last is comfort of studying in the house. As a student, it is easier to study in your own comfort zone and not being interrupted by any noise or being uncomfortable because of your uniform that you need to wear all the time, even though the temperature is really high. You can lay down in your bed while studying, unlike in school that you have to sit all day long and have a sore back later. Again, this is Janelyn A. Volante, and
Thank you very much, Ms. Volante. To summarize, one of the advantages of blended learning is being self-reliant. It also reduces hassles of commuting to school, thereby less spending and having the comfort in studying in the house. Yeah. Thank you very much, panelists, for the enlightening discussions. To sum it up, blended learning is a combination of face-to-face and online-based learning. To prevent and control the spread of COVID-19 disease, the blended learning have been utilized to continue students' education even without going to school to avoid the crowds. Blended learning has its advantages and disadvantages to both learners and teachers. The challenges encountered by students are mostly poor internet signal or connection, and too much disturbance or lack of concentration in doing their requirements. Also, students feel stressed because of too many modules to finish. For teachers, some of them are hard up in adapting the new technology and new form of teaching. Teachers also have to adjust their time for both online and face-to-face teaching. Teachers have no choice but to have good internet connection for the blended learning. But of course, it also has its advantages. One of which, students will continue their education despite the pandemic, and there is still work for teachers, especially in the private sector.